right. Well, welcome back to the Leading Virtuously Podcast. Today on the show, we have Mr. Marc Woods. So excited to have you, Marc.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I'm really excited about being here.
So, Marc, I always ask the difficult question first. Who are you?
Man, that could be a deep one, but we'll keep it up on a superficial level, maybe. My name is Marc Woods. I'm the Assistant Chief Nurse Executive for Behavioral Health for all of UK Healthcare, and that includes our state psychiatric hospital that we run as well. I've been a nurse for 28 years. I'm a father of two beautiful children, and my wife, Angela, and I've been together since high school. And it's just, one of those things that kind of keeps me grounded, certainly in the things that are important. But those are the things that I do. Part of a lot of different professional memberships, like the American Organization of Nurse Leaders, the American Psychiatric Nurses Association, on and on. But that's who I am. I live here in Georgetown, Kentucky, right outside of Lexington, and I've been a lifelong Kentuckian, which I'm very proud of. And I think that's who I am.
I have a bunch of follow-up questions to a couple of things you just spit off there. But before we dive into that, wanted to ask you, how did you get to the leadership position that you're in today?
Yeah. Well, Chris, I've been blessed, I would say. I've been blessed to have people around me all throughout my career who to some may seem as if they had no reason at all to want me to have good things and to be a part of good things and have support. But again, I think I've just been blessed to have great people around me all the time. Early in my career, I was, even when we look back and as a manager, I think when I started in 95, becoming a nurse manager, I was very young. I'd only been a nurse for 2 years, but I had a lot of people around me that coached me, and I wasn't sure if I should take that first step, right? But, one of the mantras that I recall people telling me that were important in my life was, as doors open up, you walk through them. You prepare to walk through those doors, but as they as they open up, you prepare yourself to walk through. And so I've done that over the course of my career. I've spent all 28 years in behavioral health, and I've been blessed to do a lot of different things, from educator to a variety of different leadership positions at the state hospital. Approximately 7, 8 years ago, UK Healthcare took over management of the state hospital. And it was at that moment when, I had kind of a decision to make. I could retire from the state at that time, or I could put my best foot forward and attempt to make that transition, become a UK Healthcare employee, and continue to have involvement and oversight for the state hospital that I'd always been a part of and had oversight for. And I did just that because I at the time, I think UK Healthcare was given the responsibility and to manage Eastern State Hospital. And I think in a lot of ways, they felt like they were bringing their expertise to us in behavioral health here at the hospital. But I felt like it was a different story. I felt like we had something that we were bringing to them. We had an expertise that we were bringing to them. So the door opened up for me to be the chief nurse for behavioral health at UK Healthcare and Eastern State Hospital and make that transition. And I did so. And I did so because I wanted to make a difference continue to make a difference on a higher level. And I can tell you that my transition was challenging because it was going from being at a state hospital to an academic medical center. But as I said earlier, I've always had just these people that show up in my life that helped me make some of those transitions. One of them was Diana Weaver, a nurse leader with a lot of experience, was the chief nurse at UK Healthcare many years ago, was the chief nurse at Yale New Haven. I mean, this person is just an amazing woman and an amazing leader. And I had her by my side at coaching me and helping me make that transition, and I feel like it's been pretty successful.
So you've obviously had a wildly successful career in behavioral health. What, obviously, like, we're still in this country continuing to kind of shake off that stigma behind mental health. So
Yes.
as a behavioral health leader, what are some things that you know about the industry that your average person wouldn't know, just kind of as an outsider looking in?
Yeah. So as a leader, with fiscal responsibilities, as you said, there's a statement that's made that with no margin, no mission.
Hmm.
And it basically means, that if we can have the greatest mission on the planet, we can seek and hope to do all the best things in the world and have the perfect plan to do so. But if we don't have the money to do it, or if we don't have the means to sustain or support it, then we can't do it, right? It's all for nothing. And I would say, Chris, I think there's times when that's the truth, that's the case. But I think in behavioral health, that's one of those areas where it's often not the case. And so as a leader, over the course of, decades, I've been in the business or had the challenge of having to convince people that these were worthy causes, or this was worth the profit loss, right? And so the only way to do that sometimes is to be able to, hope that you've got profit gains in other areas that will sustain some of those profit losses. And you talk a little bit about, some, events that, that kind of like remind you of that virtue. I mean, it's hard for me to pull any one. In fact, so many come to my mind. I can remember a time when we had a patient here who passed away. And I have the habit of, like, if a patient passes away, it's kind of it's a rarity, but it does happen in psychiatric hospitals. It's a rarity. And I would come in for it. And I would do it just to support the staff and support the process and just make sure that things went smoothly and whatnot. And I can remember coming in for this gentleman that was had been a patient for well over a year, had no family that wanted any sort of involvement at all. And he lived out he had palliative care, so he lived out the rest of his life here at a state psychiatric hospital.
Wow.
And this was a challenging patient. This was a patient that, like, was combative and aggressive and assaultive and whatnot. And I remember driving in, and I remember just, having a conversation with God, and you're saying how horrible this would be, how terrible this would be to live out your last days of your life when in a psychiatric hospital. How terrible that would be, with no family around you, and just seemingly strangers or people just doing their jobs, right? And so I came in with that attitude, and I knew I obviously could not show that to my staff, or else it might, impact them. And so when I got there, I might have to pause. When I got there, I'll never forget it. I knew how aggressive this man was and often hurt the staff and whatnot, but they had never given up on him. In fact, they knew he was dying days before his death, and they argued over who was going to sit with him. They held his hand. They petted him. They washed him. They made sure he was comfortable. And I remember leaving that day and just having that affirming just feeling, that affirming event that this is what we should be doing. Particularly in behavioral health, it's a challenge. It's challenging work, but it's work that has to be done, and it's not often a big money maker, and it's not often, and oftentimes it loses money, but it's important, because I thought to myself, we should also be so lucky as this gentleman to pass away with people that love us that are around us, that love us, that are taking care of our needs, that are praying with us. The staff were praying with him. They were praying upon his death. They prayed after his death. And then when I came in that day, they were all coming up to me and just telling me how honored they were to be able to spend the last hours and days with this gentleman. And this is a guy that was hitting them, hurting them, resisting them for months, almost over a year. And I just thought we should all be that fortunate to have people like that in our lives upon our passing, right? And so for me, you walk away from that, and it was just another story that reminded me just how important some of this stuff is, and just how unimportant sometimes making money or that margin actually is. So got a lot of those types of stories, Chris. That's the one that I feel like probably over I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, that one was really impressed upon my heart.
Yeah, I obviously have not had a long-standing behavioral health career, so I have trouble like being able to dive into that specific example. But having a mother or a grandmother who died of Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
and taking care of her at her end of life. And my grandfather, even though he had the money, he made each of his kids that were living in his six flat basically do rotating nights to take care of her in her last couple of months.
Yeah.
And as a 20-something-year-old punk, it's like, why do I have to do this, blah blah blah.
You
But
don't get
now looking back on that situation and recognizing like what a blessing it really was to be able to spend those intimate nights, not only with my grandma but also with my grandfather too, as he was bedside with us going through all of that.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I really no, thank you for sharing that story. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you the question about where business and virtue intersects, but I think you nailed it there, brother. That like, how do you, when you go through these like supercharged moments of
Yeah.
love with another human being,
Yeah.
it like opens your eyes to like, wow, like this is what
That's what
life is about.
matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, man, this is what matters. This is why we got into this. This is,
Mhm.
yeah. And I can't say it enough, man. It's a blessing. It's like for you and your grandfather. It wasn't just the blessing that was bestowed upon you, or the blessing of giving the care to your grandmother. It's the blessing that you gave your grandfather. That at that moment, as a child or as a young adult, you didn't quite get all of that. But what a blessing to be able to give him the comfort, the safety, and the comfort of knowing that his wife was being taken care of by people that loved her.
Mm.
So absolutely, man. It's that stuff's important, and you come across that all the time in behavioral health. It doesn't make a lot of money, but I think that's why disruptive innovation in behavioral health, things that really pushes the limits of, well, we've always done it this way. Well, let's think about doing it a different way. That's why that's so important in this field, because it isn't a big money maker, and the challenges are great, so, and varied. So yeah.
So I wanted to circle back on another thing that you shared. Well, there's two themes that I'm picking up from your interview today. And the first is that you mentioned that you feel like there's been these people that have been planted in your life to help you to grow and develop in the moments that you really needed them in your life. But I can't help but think, a recent episode, I was talking to this HR executive, and he was talking about how he had witnessed a leader that wasn't leading as his genuine self at the workplace, but then at home, he was like this loving and kind father and
Yeah.
husband, etc., and then like a completely different persona for who he thought the business needed him to be.
Yeah.
And I tell you that story because I'm curious about like when you say that you've been with your wife since high school, like with some of the divorce statistics here in the United States, I've been through one of those, etc.,
Yeah.
that you're definitely like unfortunately like one of the minority in being able to have that
Yeah.
long of a successful marriage. So I wanted to just ask you, how have you guys made that work, and
Yeah.
how does kind of like also, I guess, the theme of like, kind of like, leading virtuously, being your genuine self, how that kind of like applies both to, we've talked about work, but also like in your married life too.
Yeah. No, my wife, she helps me get ready for speeches or talks or conferences. She'll look over things I write. She's an English teacher. She has more degrees than I have, actually. She has quite a few. She's also a librarian, on and on and on. But the funny thing is that she'd be very proud that you asked that question today, Chris, because she's constantly, when I'm giving, thank yous to lots of different people, she'll kind of nudge me a bit and say, "And your beautiful wife." And so she is beautiful. More than being beautiful, she's really super smart. Chris, she's just been a great partner. We've there have been times when I think we've both been pretty supportive of each other. I think family matters to us the most. And so we've been able to kind of just lock into certain core values that are important to both of us. Listen, we're just like every other couple. We have ups and downs and argue and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I think we've both had this understanding that no matter the argument, no matter whatever the latest challenge is, it's just us. This is always going to be us, and this is who we are. But more than that, some of the values that I think we've held on to, again, aside from family, which I think is the most important piece of this, is God. I believe that's a piece. I believe education for us. That's something that both of us have valued greatly. And I say that because we didn't come from families that graduated college.
Hmm.
And between the two of us, we have quite a few degrees um, that we're proud of, and at different times we've had to support the other person. So for us, I think there's been ups and downs, but there's just been this ongoing, just like understanding that it's like no matter what, it's just going to be us. And so there are times when she struggles and I have to pick up the 80% to her 20. And there's times when I'm struggling or I can't be as available, and not just physically, but emotionally available and whatnot. And that's the time when she picks up the 90 and I'm the 10%. Um, and conversely, the opposite is also true. There's been times when it's her moment to shine, and I want to celebrate her, and I want to make sure she has her moments, and she does the same thing for me. She's very understanding, and I couldn't have picked a better partner.
So I'm curious, like, as you mentioned that you guys both grew up in just like this, your current lifestyle and quality
Yeah,
of life was not what your upbringing was
yeah,
suited to.
yeah,
So did you
yeah.
guys ever have to go through a rocky patch, kind of going through those learning curves of like living in a higher quality of life which can sometimes unfortunately kind of like pump up
Yeah,
the ego in a different way, which can obviously
yeah.
present some challenges within a marriage?
Well, that's what that's yeah, that's a great point. We both grew up from Eastern Kentucky, and from those that are from that area, that's a pretty impoverished area of Appalachia, and so when I say, oh, our families, no one had ever gone to college, graduate college before, that was kind of the norm, really, for the most part. We're also you talk about were there any rough? There were lots of rough patches, brother. I mean, there was lots of times when we just didn't have the money for things or whatnot. And in fact, we still keep each other kind of honest. When on things when we're spending money or whatnot, we'll look at each other and say, "Is this real, or should we be doing this? Is this a smart thing?" So we sort of keep each other in check. It was, but oftentimes, both of us have just I think great sense of humors, laughing at things and each other at times, and ribbing each other, super important to us. And so it's hard to get so full of yourself in our house, because there's always somebody there to kind of bust you, chop you, or, give you some shots. But at the same time, we're also extremely and exceptionally supportive of each other. I will say, um, there's been times in our lives as we're raising our own children where they're afforded something, or they're allowed to do something, that it was like my wife and I'll look at each other and say, my God, I'd lived my entire life. I'd never been outside of the country, and here my daughter's taking a a trip with her school or whatnot to Europe and doing some things like that, which, I think most parents want their children to be able to do more and so forth. But my wife and I, Angela, we will look at each other at times and go, I mean, is this real? Has this happened? Are we able to do these things? And so I don't know. I mean, I think we still stay pretty grounded in that. But yeah, no question, we've had some rough times, and but again, I think staying together and being honest with each other has been something that's been helpful for our entire family.
Hmm. Well, thank you for that testimonial.
Yeah.
Because I guess the reason I ask it because I haven't really dove deeper into a lot of other people's kind of family relationships, and because
Yeah.
we've had other conversations, I feel like
Yeah.
maybe I was more comfortable to go there. But I think
Totally.
that is important as a lesson to share too. Is like if you can have all the success that you want in the business world, but if you don't have someone at home that's blocking and tackling for you and helping to carry the load, it's
Yeah.
gonna manifest in some sort of way.
Oh, yeah, no question. Well, and like you said, I mean, I don't know what's coming up around the corner. I don't know what's going to come up tomorrow, but what I do know is that no matter what's coming up around the corner, or a week from now, or a year from now, or six, whatever it is, whatever the challenge is, I know who's sitting at home. I know who I can go to, and who I'll be facing that challenge with, and that's comforting, man. That's comforting. So
I love it. Well,
yeah,
Mark, absolutely loved having you on the show today.
thank you.
How can people get a hold of you or what your organization is up to?
Yeah, so if they'd like to email me directly, they can email me at marc.woods@uky.edu, or they can look through my company's website at www.ukhealthcare.uky.edu.
Excellent. Well, loved having you on the show today. Always
Yeah,
enjoy, connecting with you about life and business, etc. So it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, Mark. And yeah, I really am excited about the way that this episode is going to bless many people. So thank you
yeah.
for being a part of the podcast.
Oh, the honor's mine, Chris. Appreciate it anytime.
All right, great. Thank you, Mark.